Good morning, student. In today's class of managing change in organization, we'll recap all the topics that we have studied in the previous classes from the starting in Unit 1 and Unit 2. So the first topic that we'll study today is conflict in organization. So every organization faces conflict, and we have to understand what is conflict, what are the types of conflict, and to understand how this conflict can be removed in the organization or minimized. So a lot of definitions has been, a number of definitions has been given. The main definition is by Chung and Magician. It says that conflict is a struggle between incompatible or opposing needs, wishes, ideas, interests, or people. When two groups of people, or two people or groups of people, they have incompatible goals, or incompatible or opposing needs, wishes, ideas, interest, then these people are said to be in conflict. Then there is a difference between conflict and competition. As per the example, a running race is a competition, whereas a bullfight is a conflict. When the attention of the competitor is shifted from the goal to the competitors themselves, then the competition becomes a conflict. So there are various many sources of conflict. The two main sources: structural conflict factors and personal conflict factors. So we'll understand both of them. Structural factors are related to the nature and structure of the organization and the way the work is being organized in organizations. If there is a lot of specialization is more, that there will be a lot of conflict. Similarly, if a particular job is very interdependent on another job, then also there will be a lot of conflict. Then interdependence conflict can be pooled interdependence, or sequential interdependence, or a reciprocal interdependence. Then if there are differences in goal, then also there will be conflict between people. Also, there is jurisdictional ambiguities. People do not know where their jurisdiction ends, and they by mistake interfere with the jurisdiction of another person. Then also it will result into the conflict. So these are the main structural factors due to which conflict occurs. Then come to the personal factors. For the first personal factor is the skills and abilities. If the people have different skills and abilities, they do not worker may find it difficult to work with a new boss, or from because they will not be very compatible with the skills and abilities of that person. So this also results in conflict. Then come the personalities. The personalities of the people or the does not match, or they have very conflicting personalities, then also it will result in conflict. Then comes the perception of when the different people have different perceptions, then it will result in conflict. Then comes value and ethics. The value and of ethics of different people are different. So if the value of ethics do not match, people hold different beliefs and adhere to different value system, then it results to conflict. Then comes the emotions. Emotions or moods of the people can also be a source of conflict in the workplace, because people, due to having a very bad emotions when they come to work, it may spill over the work in the professional life. Then comes the communication barrier. Whenever there is a communication barrier also, then people do not clearly understand what the other person wants, then also there will be conflict. So these are the various structural and personal factors due to which conflicts can occur. Then there are types of conflicts. The conflicts can be intrapersonal. Conflict can be at different types of conflicts can be that. Inter means between, and intra means within. So the first is the intrapersonal conflict. The conflict that takes place within an individual is known as interpersonal conflict. The interpersonal conflict may come in different forms, from the simple or mundane things like deciding whether or not to go vegetarian, or go to a lunch or not, or have a particular vacation or not. And it also can be very important, like choosing a particular career path. Then comes interpersonal conflict. Interpersonal conflict means the conflict between two individuals. So if two individuals who are having incompatible goals, ideas, wishes, or opposing needs, then also there will be a conflict. It's known as interpersonal conflict between two people. Then comes intra group conflict. Intra group conflict occurs when conflict is among individuals within a team. So the individuals may fight to decide which is the best way to get a solution to a problem, or how to tackle a problem. So this may be a reason. Some of the reasons are, if the somebody wants to be the leader of the group, and other persons in the individuals the group are also wanting that particular person, that also will result into the intra-group conflict. Then comes intergroup conflict. Intergroup conflict occurs when there is a misunderstanding arises between different teams working in the organization. So the marketing team may be having a conflict with the HR team or finance team. So this is known as intergroup conflict. Then comes intra-organizational conflict. Intra-organizational conflict means the conflict that occurs within all the individuals inside the organization. That it includes mostly the intergroup conflict, the intra-group conflict, the intra-individual, intrapersonal and interpersonal conflict. All these things come under intra-organizational conflict. Then comes the inter-organizational conflict, which means the conflict between two opposing companies. So this is known as inter-organizational conflict. Then comes task conflict. Conflicts which are mostly concerned about what will be the content or the goals of a work, then it is known as task conflict. So if we do not know what is the task, then different view people have different perception of what is the content and goals of the work, so it may relate to conflict. Then comes relationship conflict. Conflict based on interpersonal relations, due to the conflict that arises because relationship between two people are not good, then it's known as interrelationship conflict. Then comes process conflict, when there is a conflict about how the work should be done or resource, so that lower levels of personal conflict. Process conflict is can be very functional, because here the aim is to get the work done in a better way. Then these are the various types of conflict that we have discussed. But when we say conflict, the major difference is the conflict may be either functional or dysfunctional. Functional conflict is good for the organization, where it aims to improve the productivity in order to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the group, of the organization. Where dysfunctional conflict is negative conflict, which tries to undermine the performance of the organization. Functional conflict refers to the confronting between two ideas, goals, and parties that improve the employees and organization performance. So this is known as functional conflict. Whereas dysfunctional conflict is the destructive conflict form that hinders the achievement of the organizational goal, is known as dysfunctional conflict. As we can see from the diagram, uh, the one side there is a level of conflict, the other side is a level of organizational performance. We can see that at point A, the level of conflict is low, but the level of performance is also low. And at point C, the level of conflict is low, and also the level of performance is also low. But we can see at the point B, the level of conflict is balanced and the organizational performance is more. So if we have very proper functional conflict and we can manage this functional conflict in the organization, then it will lead to increase in the performance of the organization. Then comes the stages of conflict. This is also very important long question, because when the question comes, what are the various stages of conflict, what is the process of conflict, then this is the various stages of conflict. The stages of conflict are of five types. Like first is the potential opposition or incompatibility, then comes the cognition and personalization, then comes intentions, then the fourth is behavior, and finally the outcome. What happens in stage one? There is the antecedent conditions of the pre-conflict conditions, like there is a communication structure of personal value. So these are the major reasons why the conflict occurs. So these are the potential reasons for opposition or incompatibility between two people or groups. Then come to the stage conflict, where there is a cognition and personalization. Cognition means first it comes to your mind that there is a conflict is going on, and then you personalize the conflict by involving yourself in that conflict. So this again is known as consists of perceived conflict and felt conflict. Perceived conflict is when a person or a individual or group perceives a particular conflict that is going to happen, and felt conflict is nothing but the personalization of conflict. Then comes the intentions. Here these are generally, when we find a conflict situation, we try to have intentions to solve the conflict. So the conflict handling intentions are generally competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. These things will later discuss in conflict handling situations, or the ways in which conflict can be handled. So we'll discuss it later. Then comes the behavior. Once the behavior, when the conflict is there and the conflict is not resolved, then it is there will be the party's behavior and the others reactions, how it is. Then if it is less, then it will be okay. But if it is more, it is not controlled, then maybe little bit of fighting. Then they may be also try to get physical. So these are the stages in which the behavior of the party and the behavior of the other party's reaction is also used. Then finally comes the stage 5, that is outcome, that either the conflict is good, then it will lead to or increased organizational performance. If the conflict is dysfunctional, that will lead to decreased group performance or organizational performance. So these are the various 5 stages of conflict that we have discussed in detail. You can go through this YouTube video that we have made, so that you can have better idea for this. Then when we're discussing about these intentions of how the conflict can be managed, so there are, this is the way, the 5 ways in which the conflict handling intentions or situations can be handled, like it is competing, collaborating, avoiding, and accommodating. So on one side we have the cooperativeness, and the other side we have the assertiveness. Competing stage is one stage where is a completely very uncooperative, but we are very assertive. So you want your um, you want to win in the at the cost of the other person, then it is competing. So when the assertiveness and cooperativeness both are less, then you are avoiding the situation, you do not want them to enter into the conflict. Then comes the accommodating stage, where the cooperativeness of one party is more and the assertiveness is less. So you accommodate the other party's ideas and do not want to get into conflict. Then comes a compromising, where the assertiveness is also 50% and cooperativeness is also 50%. This is the place you do not want to enter into conflict, and you want to find a middle path in order to resolve the conflict. And then comes the collaborating, where the assertiveness is highest and cooperativeness is also highest. So this is a place where we try to find a novel situation, where a novel situation or solution, where both the parties intentions or both the parties goals can be achieved. So this is the best way of handling the conflict. So this also we have discussed. uh, then the conflict resolution, how the conflict can be handled. Whenever there is a conflict, that conflict has to be resolution of the conflict should be done. Conflict resolution is the process of for handling disputes and disagreements between two or multiple parties. So we have discussed the various types, like avoiding, competing, or forcing, then accommodating. So as in the diagram, previous diagram we were discussing, we have already discussed these things. These are only the description of that: compromising and reconciling, and finally collaborating or problem solving. Now the other measures for handling the intergroup conflict. So apart from this of handling this interpersonal conflict, the intergroup conflict has also to be uh, completely managed, because there is also intergroup conflict in an organization. So we can try to make superordinate goals that are above the individual goals, so the people will try to achieve the superordinate goal and the conflict will be resolved. Then comes reduction of or reduce of the interdependence between groups. When there is a lot of interdependence between groups, this leads to a lot of conflict between the parties. But when this interdependence is reduced, then the conflict will be also reduced. Expansion of resources. People generally fight because of resources available in the organization. In the resources available in the organization is very less, so there is a conflict about the resources. So if we remove this, expand the resources, so the chances of conflict between the groups will be also reduced. Mediation can also be used, where conflict is tried to be solved by appointing a full-time arbitrator or mediator who sort out the differences between the conflicting group. The management can also take part in this. So mediation is also one of the way with the conflict between the groups can be resolved. Then comes altering the structural variable. If the structure of the organization is such that it results to a conflict, structural factors are resulting in the conflict, then we can alter these structural factors in order to make the organization conflict free. Then comes altering the human variable. Sometimes the conflict is due to a particular human behavior, or the people in the organization, if they do not have the right mentality. So proper training, sensitivity training, and other awareness should be done in order to make the people aware of the other people's situation, and to make the human variable or the human resources much more friendly and remove the conflict. Then comes increased interaction. If we increase the interaction between the various conflicting groups, in more and more interactions result in solving the problem, so the conflict will be resolved. Then comes the authoritative command. If when two groups are fighting, then the management can step in and try to give an authoritative command, whereby both the parties will abandon the conflict. Then comes the other measure for handling interpersonal conflict. We can, for having an interpersonal conflict, Other than the same, we can have some ways like we can talk it out. Both the parties can sit together and talk it out. Then comes practice active listening. We can use this technique by we try to use active listening and listen to the other people's problems and why the people are entering into conflict with us. So that also helps in reducing this conflict. Then comes display empathy. You can try to be empathetic with the other person, keep yourself in their shoes and understand their situation. So this will also help in reducing the conflict. Then don't hold grudges. Whenever there is a conflict, people hold grudges and carry on to those grudges and keep on fighting or continuing the conflict. So if you don't hold to the grudges, then the conflict will be automatically reduced or removed. Interpersonal conflict. Then work on your communication skills. Communication is a major problem why two people conflict, enter into a conflict. So if we have proper communication skills, then the other party will understand what we are going to communicate or what we want from them. So there will be less chance of conflict. Use a mediator if necessary. When two parties are fighting or having a conflict, a mediator can also be appointed so that two parties can the conflict between the two parties can be resolved. Then comes discuss and evaluate the possible solution. When two parties are in conflict, they can also sit down and discuss and evaluate what is the various possible situations, solutions to a particular conflict, and then they can decide which is the best for them. Then developing an agreement satisfying all. So it's like finding a collaborating situation where both the parties find a novel way in which they can remove the conflict. So these are the ways in which the interpersonal and the intergroup conflict can be handled. Then comes conflict and change. Conflict is also related to change. So how this conflict is related to change? First, we have to understand the two gifts of conflict. Conflict drives evolution and development, whether it is for our planet or species and whatever. So on the surface level, change evokes conflict between individual and group. So on the superficial or surface level, we can find that whenever there is a change, there is a conflict because the people are there in a present situation, and whenever there is a change, they have to change a lot of their behavior. So it results to conflict. At a deeper level, however, conflict offers two gifts. First one is that conflict between people or group, system, ideas signal the need for change. And second, for the leader who is aware of this conflict, they can serve as a clear message and some of the change needs to occur. The other gift is that some conflict lies in how it can be used to determine what changes are best to make, and practicing this creative conflict or functional conflict will lead to better ideas, systems, and processes. So the conflict and change are therefore related. Then creativity or functional conflict is necessary for the organization. Conflict and role of leadership, that the leadership should take active role and try to resolve this conflict. Whenever the conflict is becoming much more serious, the leadership can enter and use the authoritative command to remove this conflict between the people. And these are the way the conflict and change has been related to each other. So with this, we have completed the conflict part of the unit. What is conflict? What are the types of conflict? What are the stages of conflict? How the conflict can be resolved, and how conflict and change are related. Now coming to the second part of the unit, that is group and group dynamics. Whenever we say group, a group consists of two or more interacting persons uh, who have common goals, have a stable relationship, and are somehow interdependent and perceive that they are in fact a part of the group. So there are certain characteristics are given by Paulus Paul, which says that the group should have share a common goal, they should have a stable relationship, and they should be having some interdependent relationship, and they should perceive them in fact perceive themselves as a part of the group. There are certain characteristics, features of group. First is the purpose. There should be a purpose. Without purpose, the group cannot exist. Then there should be more or less strict, even if it's not a strict but a stable structure should be there, so that the group can be formed and exist. Then come the cohesiveness. Cohesiveness means the willingness of the people to stick to the group. This is the very important characteristics of a group or feature of a group, because every group should have cohesiveness. If the cohesiveness is more, the group will be much more binding. If the cohesiveness is not there, then the group will fragment. Then comes the norm. That certain norms mean the certain rules, unwritten rules and regulations through which the behavior of the members is regulated. So certain norms should be in place to see that that is the way each member of the group will perform. Then comes the rules. There are certain rules that each member has to be given in the particular group. These rules are very important because this helps the group member to understand their role and be a part of the group. Then come tasks. There are certain tasks should be there for a group, and this task should be assigned to the various people as per their roles. And if this task is not properly assigned, then the group cannot perform. Then comes the status. Status is how one of the main characteristics of group assesses the worth and respect accorded to an individual by their fellow members. So a member status may be derived from the standing within the group as well as the position within the organization. So status is also important, one of the characteristics of group. Then comes interdependency. Group may be defined as a collection of individuals who are very, very interdependent on each other. So whenever there is a group, there should be people who are interdependent on each other. Then comes the interaction. Interaction means there should be a proper interaction between the people, then only they can be a part of the group. Interaction is one of the major features of group. Then comes perception of memberships. Perception of membership, the group should actually think of them as a social unit consisting of two or more people, and they should perceive themselves to be a part of the group. If they do not consider themselves to be a part of the group, then the group will cease to exist. So these are the various features of group. Then comes why people form group. First is affiliation, because people are by nature gregarious, so they want to affiliate with certain people or certain groups. That is the reason why groups are formed. Then come goal achievement. Individual people cannot achieve all the goals, so certain groups goals are also there, so people they affiliate and combine together to achieve the goals. Then comes power. Individuals do not have any power in the organization, but when they are at a group, they have certain lobby power, and the management cannot uh, take advantage of the individuals. So that is the reason people join groups. Then comes the status, because being member of a particular group gives a particular status to the people, or recognition to an individual. That is the reason people they try to affiliate or join groups. Then comes self-esteem, because the individual themselves are nobody in the organization, but people have a basic desire for self-esteem, and groups provide this self-esteem to this individual. That is the reason people want to join groups. Then there is security regarding their job, security regarding their pay and their well-being in the organization. So for having this security, to having this lobby power, they want to join groups. Then there is economic condition, because sometimes due to this lockdowns or other things, they may be having problem. So the economic conditions as to the safety of their jobs and security of their payment of in their jobs, for this economic conditions also they also join groups. Then for identity, to get an identified as a part of a group, they want to join groups. Then comes the job satisfaction. Many jobs appear to be superficial, done routine and mundane, but however interesting by group, or spontaneity is encouraged by protected, that is a group. So due to this job satisfaction also the people want to join group. Then comes information, because informal groups are generally formed because of getting this information, and uh, in order to get this information, people form groups. Now we will understand what are the various types of groups. Groups may be formal or informal. Formal groups are again divided into command, task, functional, and committees. And again, informal groups are divided into interest, friendship, and reference groups. When it comes to formal groups are the groups that are having the sanction of the organization, and they are established with the sanction of the organization. So they have the particular rules, regulation, laid down rules, regulations, norms, roles. These are well defined. So this is known as the formal groups. Formal groups are consisting of command group. Command groups is determined by the organizational charge, depicting the approved formal connection between the individuals in an organization. So it's a command group, like who will be commanding whom, who will be reporting to whom. Thus it is defined as a terms of the organization hierarchy. These command groups are based on the organizational hierarchy. Then comes the task group, comprising of individuals with special interest or expertise are created by the organization authorities to work together in order to complete a specific task. In order to achieve this specific start, in order to accomplish the goals for a specific task, these groups are performed. Then comes the functional groups. These functional groups are created in organizations to deal with specific types of problems that may arise more or less in a regular basis. So this functional group is done in order to find solution to this problem. Then come committees. Committees are usually created outside the usual command group structure to solve the recurring problems. So this is generally done in order to solve the recurring problem. A committee may also be temporary, or a committee may be permanent. Then comes the informal groups. Informal groups are means they do not have the sanction of the organization. The norms are not very strict. The roles defined to the people are also not very strict. These are unwritten rules or code is that manages the people in the organization. First is the interest group. Since people have a common interest, they band together to form these groups. Then come friendship groups. These groups are generally formed because they have enjoy social activities, political, religious beliefs, or other common bonds of friendship brought between the people. That is the reason friendship groups are formed. Then comes reference group. Reference groups are people to which individual may not be directly a member, but individual sees uh, himself as a part of, want to be admires that person or a group, or want to be a part. So they form these reference groups. So then we have to understand the difference between formal group and informal groups. Like first is the meaning, that formal groups are created by the organization to accomplish a particular specific task, whereas informal groups are created by themselves for their own sake and not for any specific task. The purpose, whenever the purpose comes, the purpose for formal groups to serve a organization as per the formal ends, but for it is generally for the social satisfaction. Here in formal groups, the formation is deliberate, and in social groups, in these informal groups, it is voluntary. Then control on behavior, regulated by strict rules and regulations, these formal groups, and controlled by norms, values, beliefs in informal groups. Generally, these formal groups are very, very large, whereas these are comparatively smaller, these informal groups. Then the life of a formal group depends upon the type of the group, whether it is a command group, whether it is a committee, but it depends upon this size of the life of this group depends mainly upon the members, whether they want to stick together in the group. Then comes the structure. The structure for a formal group is very, very well defined, whereas the structure for a informal group is not well defined. The importance is given in formal group is to position, and in informal group it is given to the person. Relationship is very professional in case of formal groups, and relationship is very personal in case of informal groups. Communication moves in a very defined direction, but communication stresses, it can be also grave when communication takes place in informal groups. So how, so these are the basic difference between groups and types of groups, and what basic difference between formal groups and informal groups. Now we will understand how groups are formed and what are the stages of group formation. So these stages were developed as a 5-stage model. So we'll understand these stages. Okay, so if you look at the diagram, the first stage is forming, then is storming, third is norming, fourth is performing, and fifth is adjourning. Forming is the stage where the people come together, they do not know each other, as you can see from the diagram. So each of the members, individual members, they move in different directions. In storming stage, there is a lot of uh, the dispute or fighting between the individuals that are trying to understand each other. So that is the storming stage. Then comes the norming stage. There is some sort of leadership comes off in norming stage. Then the people try to understand the task or the goals they have to achieve. So a little bit of structure is happening in norming stage. Then comes the performing stage, where each and every member of the group understands his roles, understand the norms, the rules they laid down, and what is their task and what is the goal of the group. So if of the people in the group, they try to perform in a coordinated manner and try to achieve the goals of the organization. Then comes the adjoining group, where some members may be disbanding from the group, some new members may be added into the group. So this is the stage 5. This is the 5 stages through which the group formations takes place, group development and formation development takes place in an organization. However, the diagrams we have discussing has very distinct stages. It may not be possible to have very distinct stage in many cases. So it depends upon the people who are banded together to form a group. So this is a description. You can go through this. If you have any doubts, you can contact me, or you can go through this uh, hmm, YouTube video that we have made for that. Now we have understand what is group, then what are the types of group, then we have understood, then we understand what is the difference between a group and team. The group and team is also different. A group is a collection of individuals who coordinate their individual efforts, but a team is a group of people who share a common team purpose and a number of challenging goals. A group may have only one leader, but a team may have more than one leader. In groups, the members are independent. In team, the groups are interdependent. Team members are interdependent. A group focuses on accomplishment of individual goals, where a team focuses on accomplishing of team goals. The group members do not share the responsibility, where there is a sharing of responsibilities in case of teams. The process of a group is to discuss the problem, then decide finally and delegate the task to individual people. Whereas this is not the case in case of teams. Teams generally discuss the problem, they then decide the way of solving and finally do it collectively together. Members of a group are bothered by the conflict, but when the members of a team are not bothered by the conflict and they see conflict as a part of problem solving. In the groups, one is concerned about own outcome and challenges, whereas in teams, they are concerned about the challenges and outcomes of the group. In groups, the members are cautious about what they speak and what they say and are afraid to ask questions, but there is open communication in case of groups. The purpose, goals, and approach is to work shaped by the manager. That is happening in case of groups. But the purpose, goals, and approaches or work, how the work has to be done, it is shaped by the team leader and the team members together. Then the skills of members are random and varied, whereas the skills of these team members are very complementary in nature. The conduct of efficient meetings is seen in groups, but open discussion, active problem solving is generally seen in teams. In groups are generally motivated by one single leader, whereas the teams are motivated by the performance. Performance is evaluated by the manager or the leader of the group, where the performance is evaluated by all the members as well as the manager in case of team. So this is the basic difference between a group and team. Then let us understand the group dynamics. When we say group dynamics is understood, what are the various things we have to understand on the group dynamics? First, you have to understand, first head is the group member resources. Group member resources are nothing but the skills, personality, characteristics that are the resources for the group members that they bring with them into the group. The success of the group depends upon what are the various resources the group members bring into the group. Then comes the group structure. Group structure, the first thing we have to understand is the group size. The size of the group varies from 2 to it may be any number, but generally it is seen that larger the number of people, there is a lot of problem and there is a lot of chaos. So a small number of people are generally good. Increasing the size of people more than 10 to 12 members in a group will result into decreased dissatisfaction. Then group roles, there are certain group roles that is assigned to the people. They may be work roles that are task oriented activities that involve accomplish of group's goals. These roles related to work oriented activities involved in accomplishing the group task or the group roles. So if the roles are relating to the work, they are known as work roles. Then comes the maintenance roles. These are the socio emotional activities that help members maintain involvement in the group and raise their personal commitment in the group. These are known as the maintenance roles. Then comes the blocking roles. Here the activities that disrupt the group are known as the blocking roles. Oftentimes the blocking behavior may be a not be intended as negative. Sometimes it may be important. A lot of blocking roles like blocker, dominator, comedian, and avoidance behavior. These are the various types of blocking roles. We can discuss. These are already been discussed in the YouTube. Then comes role identity. The whenever the group members are working, members of the group are there, there must be certain role identity. There are certain attitude and actual behavior consistent with these roles, and this creates the role identity. Role identity is better when the roles are clearly defined. So whenever the roles that has been assigned to the various people are properly defined, then there will be a proper role identity and there will be less chaos. Then comes role ambiguity. When the people in the group have discrepancy about the what is the defined role and what is the perceived role, then it results in role ambiguity. Role conflict. When the individuals in the group they do not understand the perceived role and the role behavior, and they perceive the behavior, the role of the individuals as different and do not understand, then there will be a role conflict. Role expectations means, in simple words, it means what other people believe and see in you and what you should do in a given situation. So that what is the expectation of you from the other people in the group, that is known as goal expectation. Then comes the third C point, that is group norms. Group norms are nothing but acceptable boundaries or standards of behavior that is accepted, and what is acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior that is shared by the group member. This is known as the group norms. So again, then comes the fourth point is group cohesiveness. The group cohesiveness is very important. It is means the bonding power or the binding nature in the group that is found. The more there is a group cohesiveness, the less there will be conflict, and if the size of the group also increases, then the cohesiveness of the group will also decrease. So this is the group cohesiveness. Comes group processes. What are the various processes that there? The major processes in the group, the decision making process, or how the conflict can be resolved. Whenever the decision making says that generally 4 steps is there in decision making process, like diagnosing the problem, developing alternatives, evaluating the alternatives, implementing and monitoring the decision. So this in way the decision takes place. Apart from that decision taking, there is also group processing like communication, conflict management, leadership. So these are all the various processes that are also included in the group dynamics. So this is the brief understanding of the group dynamics. If you want to have a detailed idea, please go to the video that we have discussed in detail, group dynamics, in the YouTube videos. And then comes communication and change. Whenever we are talking about change, there must be certain communication about the change. If the people are properly communicated about the change, then they will be accepting the change in a much more positive manner. But whereas when the people feel that the communication change is not properly communicated, that will result to chaos or conflict in the organization. So what happens? There is a present state, intermediate state, and the future state in which the communication can take place. What happens in the present state? Explain why the organization has to move away from the current state and what are the dangers of staying there. So whenever there is a change happening in the organization, we have to explain to the people that why this change is required. So this will so that people will accept change. Then we have to understand the pressure, why it is necessary to change. Then we have to describe why the current state is used to make sense, but the organization, why due to this changing environment we have to shift from this current state to a future desired state. Then we have to clarify what happens if the organization do not change. So if these things, and also identify what change will mean to each individual. Whenever a change is to be initiated, we have to explain this thing in the present state so that the people will be embracing the change. Then comes the intermediate state, that confidence to be built up by communicating with the people. And then express confidence that although people may appear to be in a state of that is completely out of control, the state should be accounted to be in the planning process. Explain why it is necessary step on the path of the future state, and the organizations will soon move on to the future state. So we have to tell them, okay, there is a chaos in the organization. That is very common when there is a changes being initiated in the organization and implemented in the organization, and they need to be very calm, and they should accept the future state and the future rules. And then also we have to show to the people the methodology by which they will reach the future state, and how the things will look in the future state, so that the people will be less ambiguous and will be more accepting to the change. Then comes the future state. Explain what is the future will look like, and why it will look like, and what are the advantages of the future state, and why we are moving from the present state to the future state. And then identify the parts which is clear one and is not hazy, but they will have a very clear and definite picture about the future, and clarify what the future state will imply to the people in the company. So if this is done, there will be communication, and there will be a lot of embracing of the situation. There will be not chaos. So first there should be awareness, there should be understanding, there should be acceptance, and then commitment will come. So a lot of vehicles are also there. The best method to communicate is through managers. Sometimes managers can be appointed also, or the top management can enter and try to um, explain why the change is important. So there's a various ways in which additionally feedback process can be done. A good change message has to be made and properly communicated with all the questions that comes in the mind of the people. They should be answered, and the employee should embrace the change. Then the people will embrace the change much more positively. Thus communication is very vital to ensure that the change is successful in an organization and can be properly initiated and implemented in the organization. So this is all the topics that we have studied in the unit 1. So this is a revision of the unit 1. Please go through that. If you have any doubts, contact me, and we will discuss about the unit 2 in the next video.